I asked the Rabbi, but my question. Whatever.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I don't know if we'll get to that tonight, but we'll get to that maybe next week. Yeah. Okay. So just to pick up on that point, to catch up. Good. So just to pick up on that point, we were discussing last week. The Ramah brings that any bias that's shutfa shel akel v'yisrael, if it's owned by shutfa shel akel v'yisrael, is pater min hamezuzah. Passing like the Shitas HaMordechai, even though the Rashba argues and says it's chayv hamezuzah. The Ramah, for whatever reason, passing like the Mordechai. We went through Rabbi Kveger, wasn't even chayv Shitas Rashba, but that's not for now. I forgot to post last week. Sure, I think I posted a few. We have to put them up, but okay. Anyway, when it gets posted, you can put it. You can watch it. What?
It means owned or used.
He's talking about owned, but the assumption is that we take that a level down to even shiuras, right? Shiuras is also very important, Claire, to go over always and to remember this Taisus. Don't forget it. That Taisus is not sure if this that you're a renter are chayav in Mezuza. Are you chayiv midaraisa in Mezuza, and it's just we pot to you until 30 days because it's not your dira yet. It's not considered, you're not like fully there. We'll maybe discuss that a little more at length soon. That's one side of Taisus. But once 30 days hits, you're chayiv midaraisa, right? Again, just to clarify, make it 100% clear, it's only a renter that has the 30-day patur. That's that people think there's 30 days. It's not for someone who owns a house. Someone who owns a house, as soon as he moves in, maybe even before that, we'll also maybe get this a little later, even before that, but for sure once he moves in, is chayiv mezuzah miyad. Only when you rent a house do you have 30 days. Why 30 days? So Taisus says either because it's not considered your dira. It's a longish thing, even though midiraisa when you're renting, it is considered yours, but until 30 days, it's not nikfa as being your dira, whatever that story is. The second side of Taisus is that it's all midirabban, and really a seicha should be pater. You're just a renter. It's not your beisecha. It's not your house. So you should really be pater. After 30 days, we say it looks like you're living there for so long. It looks like you're biased. We're mechayiv you midirabban. Those are the two tzadim in Taisus. Okay, so now what happens when a Jew and a guy rent something together? So l'chayr should have the same din. Mimanav shachat should have the same din. If it's chayiv midiraisa, if it's a chayiv midiraisa, so it should follow the same rules of owners. The same way when someone owns a house. In joint, Yisrael and a guy, they're pater. When they're renting the house joint, that should be pater. And if it's midrabanan because it looks like it's yours, it can't look any more like it's yours than if you actually owned it together with a guy that you'd be pater, right? So we can't make it more chumrah, and we can't be more machmir on you than if you actually owned it when you rent it. But Kveger wants to say, in the case maybe where the Jew is completely in control of the usage of the house, but the guy is just has this technical violence, maybe in that case it does look like it's yours. But that's not what we're going to talk about. We're talking about, let's say, a house that they're living there together, they're both using it together. Avada you would be pater then according to the Ramah. So
that was the same night you were talking about the entrance to the apartment.
No, so now we're getting right. So we're getting into that. So what happens with these apartment buildings? What? Go up turn 9. Anything like that. So the hallway and the stairway that leave out. You were here last week, Yankee? We were discussing this, or no? Okay, I'll just keep going. Okay. I was trying to remember who brought up their place. I guess you don't live in a building and you don't have a shared entranceway. We were discussing buildings where the Ramah says that when there's a Jew and a guy joint in something, it's pater min mezuzah. So the shiloh is an entranceway to a building where there's Jews and Goyim living in the building. What is that? Is the status of that? When it comes to, let's say, Hilchos Shabbos l'mashal, we consider that stairway and that vestibule in the front of the building to be jointly owned or jointly rented by all the occupants of the building. So when it comes to Mezuza, we should look at the same thing. And in that case, those entranceways should be pater min Mezuza. That's what I would think, that those entranceways would be pater min Mezuza.
Here it's actually owned by a third party that neither of them.
Well, that's always true. I'm saying with a case when we talk about a guy and a Jew are rented together, it's owned by a third party that's neither of them.
Oh,
that is the case. Yeah, right. I mean, you're getting onto maybe you're hitting where what someone mentioned.
The building is owned by someone else,
right?
And then he rents out little pieces of the an apartment here.
Right, but whenever you have let's say you have a one bedroom house, whatever, and it's rented by a Jew and a guy together, right? That's a third party owns it. The Jew and the guy rent it. It's pater min mezuzah because they rent it together. right? So this should be no different than that. Someone owns the building. The Jew and the guy rent the hallways and the stairways together. Now that entranceway should be potter. But someone was saying last week, I think it was Moshe Wolf, who was trying to say that here might be different. Why? Because here, the Rick Fager says as follows. Rick Fager says, let's say that third landlord, in the case we're just discussing, Jew and guy are renting something together. There's a third guy living in the apartment with him, who happens to be the landlord, who's a Jew. So Fager says, in that case, you're chayav, because he owns the whole apartment, right? And he's also living there, so he has everything to be chayav him. Just because the fact that there happens to also be a guy living there renting from him is not going to share his bailus over the apartment when he's living there. That's what Fager said. So Moshe Wolf wanted to suggest that over here also in the entranceway in the stairwells, the owner of the building, let's say like the building on Alicia's building is owned by a Fermiet, the owner of the building also has those chus shtamshus there, right? They can't stop if the people in the building put up a no trespassing sign outside the building, right? And they decide to stop people from coming in. They can stop Erev from coming in, but I don't believe they can stop Mr. Pollack from coming in, right? He's the owner of the building. He has his chus to be in there. I would imagine the no trespass, they cannot legally block him from entering the building. I don't know if that's true. So, there are lawyers here. I don't know, but I would imagine that there's no ability to stop the owner of the building from coming into the stairwell. He can't come into your apartment without permission, but he can come into the stairwell. So he is that case. This is mamish that case. You've got a Jew and a guy, using the stairwell together, but the owner of the building, who's a Jew, is also using that stairwell together with them, and therefore it should be mechayevit
Isn't it
in
different
Mezuza.
than someone living there, because he's just coming, let's say, once a month or once every 2 months to check on the building. Someone who's living.
I'm not sure that should matter. The Maisa, he has his chus shtamshus there and he's using it. We have cases like that are just derech harai and don't have to be enough, but Lamai says the shtamshus is at any time. As much as the people in the building, he's not really any less than them. He happens to use it less.
The chiyuv Mezuza is coming from Shamshus or coming from like the Kedira, like living there?
It comes from two things. In this case, it's coming from owning it together with having an shtamshus with it, and having. We'll see. There's going to be a lot of examples of these types of things, and we'll have to see where it falls. It could potentially be true what you're saying. I'm not disregarding this far. So we're going to get to that. Yeah, apparently not tonight. We'll see. But we are definitely going to get to that. There's still a lot to cover. That was as far. So what?
What about like the public areas like that? Is he like technically the owner?
What? Which public
Let's say
areas?
like the laundry room.
That's what I think. I think they're all owed. They all have his chus shtamshus. I think them together with him. I think they all do. So someone was arguing on this. I was talking about it today with someone, and he was arguing on this. He's like, well then, but then I realized that his har is not a good har. I'll tell you why in a second. He said, and then every Jew who's owning any building in the Bronx that's owned by a Jew is going to have a mezuzah then, because he's a shutef together with the guy using the building, and he has his chus shtamshus, and where are you going to draw the line? How often he goes in there? In terms of the Chiyuv Mezuza. You could say there he never goes, and here I know, let's say, specifically in Alicia's building, he's there all the time. Mr. Pollack maybe doesn't use, he goes to the side door, but he's there in the building. Yeah, he's around all the time
Amazon
in the building.
warehouse, like someone has an
Let's leave that. Let's get to warehouses, or let's stick to buildings right now. Yeah, it could definitely be different in those cases.
Hero, like meaning a chiyuv of a Jew there to have like the Indian of Dira, and then he's also.
No, because if it's a shared dira.
Yeah, but so far as you're saying his chus shtamshus there is enough, I don't know why you shouldn't need a Jew to be in one of the apartments. I don't think it's a good time to just tell you why, because there's a halacha that if you're chayshish that it's going to cause a bizoyin to the kisvei hektish, to the mezuzah, you don't put it up. Even if you're mechuy midraisa, we don't put it up. We said the example was like in the gates to the cities in Bavel. Even though Roiv Jew, the cities were Roiv Jews, since there were some goyim and there were chayshish are going to invaza kisvei hektish, they did not put it up, even though you're mechuy midraisa.
That should be the ghetto example.
Right, yeah, we were talking about that also with the Kovna Ghetto. But so here I'd imagine that while on Avenue 15th Street, we're not really worried about Bizayan Kitzvah Hekesh, so we've mentioned that last week, and nothing has changed in this day and age, who knows, but generally we're not worried about, I don't think we're so worried about people are living in these areas, are respectful, you want to live in this neighborhood, you hope, at least if you're not going to be respectful of it, but you're going to start putting up on buildings in the Bronx, you're going to put up mezuzahs, there's a good chance, there's going to be a Bizayan Kitzvei Kodesh. That's probably a good reason why, even if technically you could say any Jewish-owned building. If we say every Jewish-owned building up there is Chiyuv Mezuza, we'd have a lot of A lot of them be a big boom for the mezuzah business. Let's put it that way. But I can't imagine they are putting it up, and so that is a very legitimate reason not to be zoning kisvei hekdesh, even if in lamdas they are. Okay, what I wanted to move on also something we started discussing at the end and we left it. There were a bunch of good questions that were raised. We got it from the Kovna Ghetto Shiloh. There was a Shiloh about what if you're a jail cell? Do you have to put up a mezuzah on your jail cell? Right? Yeah, unfortunately relevant Shaila sometimes. So people were throwing out different good svaras. Why? One of the truvas that I mentioned was from Rabbi Oshri, this Rabbi Oshri's father in the Kovna Ghetto, that he wrote that they did not have to put up mezuzahs. He was mechadish a svara really that it's more than just a dir bal karcha. It's like they So the Gemara says dir b'karcha is still shema dir. When you don't want to be there, it's still enough. But he's like, this is more than dir b'karcha. He's like, this is like people are desperate to get out of there, and there's rifles basically pointed at them. It's not a dir. It's not a dir at all. That's basically what he was mechadish. But from there, it brought us to some other shilas as follows. So you have a halacha.
Isn't it different than the other cases because you don't have the property when someone's in a jail? If someone's renting an apartment, he has the use of that. Here, if he gets moved around,
It might. So that is a very good svara. It's potentially a svara, but it's not so pasha.
And they can inspect his mattresses.
It is potentially a very good svara. It was mentioned also last week, but we'll get. It's not so pasha. That's 1 second. There's a halacha as follows. The Pasman Shulchan Aruch. It says sukkahs chag b'chag. A sukkah on sukkahs is pater min mezuzah. It also says that a batim shebesfinos, houseboats, are pater min mezuzah. The stipler is mesupuk. What is the pshat? Why is a houseboat pater mezuzah? Is it because it's just not the derech people to live there? They go for a little bit. They go on vacation. Maybe they'll stay out there 2 weeks, maybe even 30 days. But they don't live there bikfiyas. It's not normal to live on your houseboat bikfiyas. But were you to actually live there bikfiyas, you're going off the grid and you're living on your houseboat and that's it. And you're just going to come back for staples and then go back out. What is the status of that? Or is the pshat that that's not a dira beisecho, and the Torah talks beisecho, it has to have a certain nature of a permanent dwelling, and houseboats aren't built that way. I guess if it was built in, so it's okay. L'maisa, he said the Stifler said that Reb Chaim brought him a raya. So the Chaim brought him a raya from a Rambam. The Rambam says, why is mezuzah considered? He lists mezuzahs as one of the mitzvahs that are not chiyuvas. You don't have to do mezuzah. Obviously, if you own a house, you have to do it, but you can go through your whole life without doing mezuzah if you'd like to. So he says, why? How can you go through your whole life without? You got to have a house. So he says you can draze a chanetzah. One of the eitzes he gives is you live on a houseboat. Live your whole life. You live out your life on a houseboat. Batim shebesfina. You are pater. So Zaktim Chaim. What do you mean? If you're going to live there for your whole life, you become chayav. Then the Rambam, that's not a good eitzah. And to say the Rambam means you'll go from houseboat to houseboat, every few months, is not mistaver, and therefore he brought a raya from the Rambam that he lists houseboats as your eitzah to not have to do mezuzah. Vaista is a houseboat you could live there for your entire life, and you would still not have to put mezuzah on. It sounds like a pretty good raya. Minchas Yitzchak did not like this. Yitzchak did not like this raya. He says he argues a different way. He has a different svara why he wants to disagree and go the other way. He says, what's the makar for this din that a houseboat is pater? There's no Gemara, there's no Brisa, there's nothing. People say Tosefta. He says there's no Tosefta, there's nothing. So he wants to suggest the raya is from sukkahs chag b'chag, from the fact that a sukkah is pater on sukkahs because you're only there for 7 days. Right? Why is a sukkah pater on sukkahs? Because you're there for a very short time. So it's a short-term thing. It's a chefs of like a short-term thing. That's the only makar for this din. That's why it's in the same halacha in Shulchan Aruch. It says sukkahs chag b'chag is pater, and who din batim shebesfinos, because it's learned from there. But it's mavur. He says if you live in a sukkah that is your house, and you're always living in a sukkah, you have to put a mezuzah. You would have to put a mezuzah on it. So from the dimyon, if that's the whole makar, it can't be. He says that a permanent bayit shebesfina is chayav, and therefore he says if you are living permanently on your houseboat, he says you should put up mezuzah. He says tzarichin l'ma'asev you should make a bracha, and whenever you have a tzarichin about making a bracha, we don't make a bracha. But he holds the ikar is you should put up a mezuzah. So what he's not his actual halacha that was mentioned to him. This is someone asked us last week. I found the shiur from the Minchas Yitzchak about it. Someone asked about RVs. That's what he's discussing. And he says basically, yes, if you live in an RV, you're one of these RV parks, and you're there, it's your park, that is your house. He says Avada.
How's it different than a houseboat?
He's saying that a houseboat would be chayiv if you lived there permanently. That's his argument. So he's saying, so who
If
did?
you make a bracha?
He says you don't make a bracha. He says tzarichin about whether or not you make a bracha, and therefore not to. But therefore he says if a person is living in an RV for his entire life, he said someone wanted to. I think his son even wanted to tie in he wanted to bring a raya. He didn't just tie in a vacuum, but he wanted to bring a raya that you say that's similar to the jail sfari. That's if someone really wants to get out of there. You don't want. Why are people living in these? We're not talking about someone who's just a free spirit. They're driving America and they're going to do this for the rest of their life. Maybe that's a different story. But generally, people are living in RV parks are not really interested in living there, but they have to because their circumstances. So he says in those cases that I'm just thinking one of these old racist, I guess you would call them nowadays. The redneck joke, the redneck. What was his name? Said, how do you know if you're a redneck? If you have a house that's mobile and a car that isn't, you know you're a redneck. Yeah, that was back in the good old days when you could make such jokes and it was okay. What's it called? So he says that that he wanted to say this type of story. He says if you're going to say that, so then anyone who's got a starter home somewhere, they really want to get to the rich homes, right? If you're living in I guess I know it's like Lawrence, if you know Lawrence, it goes like up into how it goes, like there's north and then there's regular Lawrence and then there's like back Lawrence, right? So like if you're living north, you want to be in regular Lawrence, and regular Lawrence you want to be in back Lawrence. So basically until you're in back Lawrence, you don't have to put up a Mezuza, right? Like it doesn't can't be. Huh?
Even from there, I'm sure there's other neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure from what I've been told. I've never been to back Lawrence, but from what I'm told, that's really not going much up from there. But anyway, okay. So that was we just discussed in this last week. That was the halacha. That's what comes out by RVs. That's the interesting truth from the Minchas Yitzchak. It's at the end of the day. It's a machlokes basically between the Chaim and the Minchas Yitzchak. And it sounds like if you're living there permanently, Taka, you should put it up for a long time. If you're not living there permanently, even if you're there for a very long time, that seems very clear that everyone agrees. Though that would be even if you're going to be in your houseboat or in your RV for a few months, you do not have to put up a mezuzah. What about hotels? We discussed last week hotels, or more again might be like Airbnbs or something, and we'll discuss what do you mean if you're there for less than 30 days. Usually it's not Negeya, but what if you are there for longer? Or we'll get to another important shaila in a second. So what is the halacha? Let's just get the background here when it comes to this stuff. So the halacha is paskin based on the Gemara mentioned earlier that if you own a house, you have to put a mezuzah right away. That's pash. If you are renting a house, so as we know, as we mentioned, if you're renting a house in Chutz La'aretz, or if you live in a hotel in a punduk in Eretz Yisrael, then you're potter mezuzah for 30 days. For Shloshim Yom. But if you rent a house in Eretz Yisrael, you're chayav mezuzah miyad. Al mitzvahs yishuv Eretz Yisrael. They want people to be committed to their homes in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore al mitzvahs yishuv Eretz Yisrael. We want you to like feel locked in, and therefore even for less than 30 days, you have to put up a mezuzah right away in Eretz Yisrael. You don't have that 30-day thing. You only have the 30 days in Eretz Yisrael in a punduk in a hotel. So the shaila is like this. The suffix is what do we discuss here? What is the patur of a hotel? And it's important because it's mashma that after 30 days, and the Aruch Shulchan writes lahedja, after 30 days you're chayav in a hotel. Sign Eretz Yisrael, sign Chutz La'aretz is the mashma. That if you're living there, if you're going to stay in this hotel for a very long time, for more than 30 days, if you've been there for more than 30 days, you would be chayav. So what's the patur that becomes chayav after 30 days? So if you're going to tell me the patur of a hotel is that hotel is like what Yechiel was saying before, that type of svara. They can move you around. You're bilus in a hotel. When you go to a hotel room, we mentioned this last week, they can move you, they can switch your rooms technically. It might not be good for customer service, but legally they can totally switch you to a different room at any time. You have no bilus on your room. This is a big part of the reason why people have a problem with making a bracha on when you do b'dikas chametz in a hotel. And by now all the programs are onto this, and they have answers how to make a real kinyan and give you a real kinyan on it so that you can make a bracha. This is already old hawk, so they figured it out by now. But But that was an issue that was raised many times. You have no bailus on a hotel room. It's not renting. It's not even a rental. So if that's the p'tur, if that's why a pundik is pater, that means that after 30 days, even though they could move you around, right? Yeah, you understand? The says that then there will be a raya that svara is not good. The svara you're saying by a jail cell is not really good because once it's 30 days. You would be chayiv, even though they can just move you around at any second. Afal pikin, it's enough. Again, it's a derabanan pashta. So if it's a derabanan, it looks like it's yours. That's enough. It doesn't really matter that in lumdus they can
When does the
chiyuv
chiyuv start? Day 31, or as soon as you know?
That's an excellent question. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in a second. That's a major discussion in Pesach. Because that's even one. Well, okay, we'll get to it. I don't want to get off topic right now. I want to finish this with hotels, and then we'll get to your shaila. So. You have what we're saying. So you have this. So if you say the p'tur of a hotel is that they can move you around, then that means that after 30 days, even though they can move around, it's pater. But if you say that no, the hotel we're talking is a hotel where a person has a real bailus. It's just not something. It has no real kitchen. It's not something people live in permanently. It's something that's by nature just a temporary thing. So let's say, like for example, what we were saying a second ago, why do we bechayev a bias in Eretz Yisrael, a rental, even less than 30 days? Because we want people to be committed to their rentals, their apartments in Eretz Yisrael, and not be moving back so quickly, not be, what Rabbi Yeshua would call seminary young light. Come to Israel and they're back. They're bouncing first thing. They're back in America. He wants real Yungalite living in Eretz Yisrael. So we want people really living there, and we want them sticking to their batim. That's true by a rental apartment, but by something that's a hotel, even though you owe, even if in lumdus you made a shiur on it, but there's no point in locking you into Eretz Yisrael. It's by its nature. It's something you're going to be out of there as soon as you can. So it's a vacation thing. So, or whatever, or a temporary thing for necessity. So therefore, there's no reason to bechayev you. So we pat you. But after 30 days, since you really have a bailus, we are bechayev you. Which that would mean on the flip side that it's potentially a very logical svara. That's something you have no bailus in at all. Like modern day hotel systems where you have no bailus and they can just move you around, or a jail cell where you have no bailus, you can be there, or something where you're a guest by someone's house, you have no bailus in it, they're letting you live in their house, but you've been there for 30 days, let's say you're in a Frey's house, they don't have a mezuzah, they're so afraid they don't even have a mezuzah on their door. You've been staying there you should probably put up a mezuzah right away, of course, and whatever, that's probably anyway else. Other reasons you shouldn't stay there if there's no mezuzah. Okay, but let's just say now in lumdus, are you mechuyev in mezuzah? Now, if you're just staying in this guest room for more than 30 days, it could say, no, it's not my room at all. I have no chiyuv. It's their chiyuv. They should be doing it, and maybe I shouldn't be encouraging it by staying here. But once you're there, you're not mechuyev necessarily in mezuzah because there's nothing here. It's different. It's worse even than a pundik than the pundik of the Yishayim. Okay, this is just, I'm just throwing it out there at the end of the day. It's a shaila. Another important afkamina that comes up is let's say a guy does take an Airbnb, you rent a tzimmer in Eretz Yisrael. So there you really do have a schus. The tzimmer guy can't just bounce you around to any tzimmer. There it's different. It is a shiur for a few days, right? We do an Airbnb for a few days in Eretz Yisrael. This has happened to people. You show up at your Airbnb, there's no mezuzah. There's no mezuzah on the door. So what are you supposed to do now? The halacha is that when you're soicher bayis in Eretz Yisrael, even for less than 30 days, you have to put a mezuzah. Right? If you're in America, it's only going to be a shiur more than 30 days. But if you're in Israel, it could be a shiur even just for 2 days. Maybe you can't stay in this place if you don't have a mezuzah. If you don't have mezuzah to put up, this is a major shiur. So it really depends on this thing. If you say that a pundik is anything that's nicker, that it's not a permanent thing, so then you'd have to know by the Airbnb, because maybe it's a full house that's fully stocked with a kitchen, maybe it's not, so you do it. Or, everyone knows these are tzimmers that people just rent for a few days and come out, so it's nicker to everyone, that it's just a few days things, that might be enough to pot you. But if the whole Torah punduk is just that it's something that person could bounce you any second, then there's no heter there, and you would have to put up, if you walk into Airbnb in Israel, and there's no mezuzah, you would have to put up a mezuzah. Okay, so so another thing we wanted to get to was what.
Can you remove it afterwards? You have to leave it for the next.
No, you can.
No, I think if you have a house or something, that person can be a Jew, you're not allowed to.
Right. So here you're saying, right, and it's
another Jew's going to take it.
Another Jew is going to assume, unless you're in like an area where it's just as likely an Arab would take it. You should leave it up. You have to put it up and leave it up. Yeah.
Cost is going to add up if you do a lot of these timbers, right? You start putting up mezuzahs everywhere.
Yeah.
But if it's occupied, it's not really yours.
I never looked at like that. I assume they all mezuzahs. So I don't know, maybe not. That's probably not a good assumption. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Mishra says that he once rented a place. I'm gonna get there. And there was over the bed was a Yoshka, and so and these people were very religious people, and he's like, I'm not sleeping here with this up there, obviously. So he took it down. And he was about to leave, and my figure's like, okay, we have to put it back up. It's our house. And it's just like, there's no chance. I'm not putting it back up. It's like, we're going to lose our deposit or whatever. He's like, okay. Like, we lose it. Like, I'm not putting it back up. Like, and kachava is that they got a fine for not putting it back up. Anyway. Okay, so what happened? So now getting back to rentals just for 1 second, we'll wrap up this Inyan. Very important Inyan when it comes to mezuzah is this halacha that renters are patur. Why do renters have 30 days? To put it there, mezuzah. Rashi and others trying to say Svara that basically it's because there's a chance that they could just back out of it for 30 days. They weren't as locked in. And the place can speak out, even though you made a kinyan and whatever, but you could be Matthias the guy and get out of it, within 30 days, and therefore Rashi says it's patur. But based on this, many parties can want to say that if a guy knows that he's long term here, he has no tzad, he's leaving in 30 days. He's here, he's locked in a long term contract, and there's no tzad, he's gone in 30 days. It could be that he should be chayav miyad. I believe that's the question you're asking. I mean, if a guy's taka not sure, maybe yeah, maybe not. Maybe we'll back out on it. Then he taka has then it's only once 30 days hits. That's clear. But this is the question where someone goes into a long-term rental and he's supposed to be there for more than 30 days. So some want to suggest it's brought actually this psak is brought by the Chavaz Das. I forgot where it is, in one of the Sifrei Chavaz Das, that he wants to say this type of psak, that somebody who, once you're locked in long term, you are mechuyev miyad, and the Rosh Shulchan says this also, that once you're locked in long term, you're mechuyev miyad, which is, a major thing, that knocks out, for basically most people, this idea that a renter has 30 days, that would really knock it out. Now, there are those who want to say that Nachlas Tzvi wants to tie it like this on this Chavaz Das. Where is this? What would be the? Where are you coming up with such a thing? The Gemara says the lashon is that a tzaycher is past 30 days. Taisa says midrabanan, it doesn't look like it's yours, and after 30 days it looks like it's yours. So where are you getting this from to be mechayev you just because you're locked in long term? Until 30 days it doesn't look like it's yours. That's what Taisa says. So where would such a thing come from? So he wants to suggest that the Chavaz Das must be going with the first Pshat and Taisus. What was the first Pshat and Taisus again? That really, midiraisa, you're mechuyev, right, in Mezuza. You have 30 days because it's not nikra shem dir. Zart the Chavaz Das, yeah, it's not nikra shem dir, but if you have a long-term contract, it's your dir right away. Right? It's only if you're not sure, you're on the fence about this apartment, then it's not called your dir. Then it makes sense. Meaning in the first lashon of Taisus, where the pshat is it has to be called your dir, and it's not called your dir because you get out of it. There's a strong makom to say the Chavaz Das is chiluk. That you have to that b'makom where you're locked in, it's called your dir right away. But in the second Shantai says that it only looks like yours after 30 days. Where do you come up with such a thing? Therefore, Nachlas Tzvi wants to say we do not have to reckon with this Chavaz Das, because Rabbi Kveger said, and that's the last time Rabbi Kveger says we pass like the second lashon Taisus that a soicher is on the chayav midrabanan al tanira, and that lashon not. He wants to say the Chavaz Das is going with the shach. It's a little technical. We won't get into it. The shach for some reason brings the first lashon Taisus. Basically, you want to make a machlekes, and Kveger's masking to this that the shach was arguing on him in that tshuva. I skipped that paragraph, but he is masking that he's going against the shach. So basically, wants to make a machlekes shach and Kveger. How we paskin is a soicher chayav midrabanan, which is a soicher chayav midraisa, and the Chavaz Das is going with the shach that it's chayav midraisa, but otherwise we can disregard this far and get our 30 days back.
How are you allowed to make a bracha before 30 days?
So that's the big question. So now are you allowed to put it up right away and make a bracha? Right? What are you supposed to do? If you're not chayav until 30 days, maybe you're not allowed to put it up and make a bracha. So Rav Moshe wants to say that basically he basically wants to say that you can combine the shita right. That if you combine the shitas of the Aruch HaShulchan together with the Chavaz Das, you can. 1 second again. Let me just get it straight. Right, no, okay. I confused two things here. I'm sorry, we have to go back for a second. The Shita, there's two different things here. There's the Shita of the Aruch Shulchan, which is that I really brought this up in the Chavos Das. The Shita of the Aruch Shulchan is that when you're locked into a long-term rental, you're chayav miyad. That's number one. The Chavos Das Shita is a different thing. The Chavos Das Shita is that even though you're not chayav until 30 days, you can make a bracha miyad. That's the Shita of the Chavos Das. So you could make a bracha right away. So Moshe basically wants to say that you put the Chavos Das, even though it might be a Das Yochid, together with the Aruch Shulchan who says once you're locked in long term, you're chayav right away, to allow you to say you should put it up right away. Meaning, even though individually we don't paskin both these things, we don't paskin your chayav miyad like the Aruch Shulchan, and we don't paskin you really should be making a bracha right away. But if you're locked into long term, so you have both those things. You have the opinion of the Aruch Shulchan that when you're locked in long term, you're chayav right away, and you have the opinion of the Chavos Das, you can make a bracha right away, even before the 30 days comes. Together, Moshe says you can put it up right away, and even make a bracha.
Why do you make a bracha with the Shulchan if you're chayav?
What?
If you're chayav right away, why don't you make a bracha?
You would make a bracha, right?
With the Shulchan.
You would make a bracha with it for sure.
So it's Chavos.
No, the Chavos Das is saying even without the Aruch Shulchan that you're chayav miyad, even though you only chayav after 30 days, you can make a bracha miyad. The Aruch Shulchan is saying you're chayav miyad. So together, those two things, you can put it up and make a bracha. That's what Moshe says. V'kach minhag ha'olam is as soon as you have them, you give yourself 30 days because you don't have to be makar on the Aruch Shulchan. So if you need 30 days, you can give it. But you can put it up right away and make the bracha. Interestingly, Rav Moshe says, and this Paiskim do not necessarily agree with. There's a mefurish and achot not Birkei Yosef not like this. Rav Moshe says, but maybe better is to put it up right away, wait 30 days, and after 30 days make the bracha. And he says, you don't only make the bracha on the putting on the mezuzah. He says, what's it different than tzitzis? He says, tzitzis also you put it on before you put on the tzitzis, but it's kolzman you're wearing them. If you have to make a bracha, you can make the bracha.
Don't we move this around?
You can, but you don't have to do. Meaning, you could just make be'etzem and lumdus. You could make it. That's what we do to get a ma'asav. You don't have to. Just the wearing it, the levisha is enough. Be'etzem, just the fact that you're wearing it, you can make a bracha. Kolzman that you're wearing it. 2 hours later. It says, what's the difference here? You put it to mezuzah. So now at later, 30 days later, you can make the bracha. Just you remember back the first shiur I said a mezuzah, which is going back into Elul. But there was a Rabbi Kveger brought a Birkei Yosef, the Chidah, that says that it's not true by mezuzah. By mezuzah, there's no ma'isa. Your guf is not doing any ma'isa. The house has to be lived in. You have to be living in the house. But that's not considered, your guf is doing a ma'isa, living in the house. The mezuzah is on the doorpost. It's nothing to do with your body doing anything. When you're wearing tzitzis, you're wearing tzitzis. So you're wearing tzitzis all day. You can make a bracha at any time if you haven't made it yet. But you're not doing a ma'isa that's mechayev you a mezuzah at all times. It's just a technicality that the bias has to be mechayev a mezuzah.
Putting on of the mezuzah is not a ma'isa?
The putting on mezuzah is, so that's when you put it on, you make the bracha. But when Moshe is saying put it on right away, and then after 30 days make the bracha, 30 days later, without taking it off and putting it back on, that's not enough.
And you're just shocked.
You don't know, you don't do anything. He's saying just make the bracha. That l'chayr is not so posh that you should be able to do it. So the minhag ha'olam is to put it on right away, and to make the bracha. One other thing, we'll finish with this. This is just as important. When you buy a house, right? So when you buy a house, the minhag ha'olam is you wait till you move into the house to make a bracha. Now, Reb Chaim Kanievsky is very mesupik. He's not sure because it says the lashon of the Masechtas Mezuzah is that when a bayis, once it's nigmar, once the house is finished, is chayav mezuzah, and he holds that lashon means that even before you actually move in, right away, once it's nigmar, it's enough that you can put up the mezuzah and make a bracha. And he wants to suggest even before you move into the house, it's best to right away when you own the house. Assuming if you're not doing any construction, it's going to mess with them. But right when you buy the house, even if you're not moving in for 2 weeks, for 2 months, right away you should put it up. Again, the minhag ha'olam is not to. The minhag ha'olam is not until you move into the house. It's not considered a beis dira. One of the tanaim is that it has to be a house that's being lived in, and therefore until you move into the house, it is you would not make a bracha on Mezuza. One kasha we'll leave off with this because it'll segue into what I'll talk about next week. Is that one of the Velt's kashas on this is that the halacha is, we'll see it more next week. But the halacha is that a base oitzer is chayiv, storage house is chayiv in any place where you're storing things, warehouse, garage, whatever we'll talk about. But a base oitzer is chayiv Mezuza. So once you put your stuff in the house, right, you should l'chayra be chayav mezuzah. So exactly when you consider beis ha'itzer, but usually it's very common that people move in little by little, but they have things being stored in there the entire time. So or let's say in my example, I haven't been living in my house for 4 months. It hasn't really been a beis dira, but I've had it it's definitely a beis ha'itzer. It's storing a lot of stuff in there. So am I chayav mezuzah the entire time, or am I supposed to be when I put on the mezuzah's back? Is there a new chiyuv now? So that's one of the kashas when people move into the house. Why right away when it's a beis ha'itzer, basically once you start storing things, you should be chayav mezuzah. We don't do that l'maaseh. That's why we wait till the day people move in and you do a miyad.
Excuse is just not complete. You're not even make it.
So you're saying, I think what I think you're saying, which is as far as people say, is that you're saying it's one thing a storage house that's its usage. Here you're planning on usage. It's not negative usage. Okay, that's a nice part.
If you move into a house that already has mezuzahs, at what point do you make a bracha?
It's a chiddush, but we'll get to what.
If you move into a house that already has mezuzahs, at what point do you make a bracha?
No.
Not
Not really. Once you buy the house, if you're not moving in for 2 weeks, you can really take them down and then put them back up 2 weeks later. But if you left them up the whole time, just to take them down for an hour and put them back up is not enough. That's what das to put it back up. So it wouldn't be enough to make you make a bracha, and you can't really take it down for any longer than that. Maybe take it down to check, and let's see if it does. But yeah, you wouldn't really make a bracha. Okay. I forgot to bring. We started learning Tanya again last week, at least for our test. I forgot to bring it. Just tell you one thing just that I was thinking about this week. It's not really it's related to